Hey, as we get started, I want to ask you a couple of questions. First, do you sometimes think you're not as smart as everyone thinks you are? Do you shy away from taking leadership roles because of self-doubt? If you answered yes to either one of these questions, you're in the right place. Our speaker today is Distinguished Toastmaster Maureen Zappala, a former NASA engineer with 13 years of experience conducting jet engine research. So yes, she is a rocket scientist. Today, she's an award-winning author and speaker, as well as a mom to two college-age kids. In fact, she says raising kids was way harder than jet engine research, like way harder. While at NASA, she frequently heard her own self-talk say, "You're not as smart as everyone thinks you are. You're in over your head, and you are a fraud." It was imposter syndrome, the secret self-doubt that crushed her creativity and stifled her strengths. In this session, Maureen will show you how to turn down the volume of that self-doubt voice so you can match your confidence to your competence and unleash your influence. You'll feel great about being great. Please help me welcome, all the way from District 115 in sunny Las Vegas, author, speaker, and unimpressively average golfer, my friend Maureen Zappala. Pushing the envelope.
Thank you, Chick. Gosh, it's so cool to be with the people of District 68. This has been a journey to get to this conference, hasn't it? Who would have thought that I would be meeting with you virtually instead of in person? So I really am excited to be with you, and I'm excited to share with you this great message of overcoming imposter syndrome. Now, I want you to think back to when you first started a job, your first day on a new job. How did you feel? Did you feel excited? And maybe did you also feel terrified? I know I did too. In 1983, I was fresh out of college, brand new engineer at my first big girl job. I was hired as a researcher for NASA. NASA, I mean, that's like where all the smart people hang out. Now, I was assigned as a project engineer in a facility, a test facility that tested jet engines. It was called the Propulsion Systems Lab. And for me, I mean, I was excited and terrified. I was excited because I still am a huge aeronautics fan. And I knew that the Propulsion Systems Lab, this PSL facility, was like, it was like the birthplace of anything flying used technology that was developed in PSL. So I was beyond excited, but I was also terrified because this was NASA. I mean, I went to University of Notre Dame. Can we still be friends? I went to Notre Dame, and you know what? I was not a straight A student. In fact, I remember thinking, what was NASA thinking when they hired me? Did they not see my transcript? Surely someone made a mistake. Or maybe they just hired me because I was a girl. But either way, my excitement about my new job propelled me forward. Now, my first assignment in PSL was really simple. All I had to do was observe the test crew conducting a jet engine test. I mean, how hard is that? Show up, shut up, don't screw up. I could do this. Well, I walked into the control room that very first day, and it was magical. I mean, for me, it looked like mission control. I'm sure you've seen control room pictures of counters with keyboards and clipboards and walls filled with monitors and TV screens and people on headsets really intensely communicating with each other. I was electrified. But I looked at this room full of about 18 people and I thought, oh my gosh, I so do not belong here. But I have a job to do. I could do this. I looked in the room, one empty seat was left in the back of the room. And I thought, that seat's mine. So I stepped into the room, slithered along the wall, plopped myself down in that chair and began to do my job. I had no clue what was going on. No clue. I tried to pretend I did, but I wanted to just stay absorbed in the intensity. And then all of a sudden, we all heard it. Help, 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 help. I was mortified, mortified. My one job, and I feel like I blew it. And in an instant, every head snapped in my direction, and I could hear them all think, who's she? Who let her in? She doesn't belong here. She's not one of us. Now, maybe you're thinking, really, Maureen, it's just hiccups. Everybody gets hiccups. I know. The story is not about hiccups. The story is a metaphor of hiccups, because in a room full, well, I say a room full, in a virtual conference like this, filled with people like Toastmasters who are committed to self-improvement, determined to build up their skills, curious about what their capacity and capabilities are. We come into Toastmasters from a wide range of backgrounds. Many of us, most of us, have excelled and exceeded in our career, in our workforce, in our life. And yet we still sometimes feel like we are a hiccup away from somebody saying, who's she? Who's him? Who let her in? What's he doing here? They don't belong here. It's called imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is the secret self-doubt that causes smart, skilled, successful people to discount the fact that they are smart, skilled, and successful. And it fills you with this internal fear, the secret fear of somebody catching on to you and uncovering you as a fraud. But it's an illegitimate thought process. It's illogical, it's irrational, and thankfully, it's overcomable. Is that a word? I just made it up. How's that? So I would like to have you join me on a journey here for the next 35 or 40 minutes or so to help you overcome your imposter syndrome experience. Because I've been in Toastmasters a long time, a couple of times, maybe 3 times, maybe 4, I don't remember. I joined for the first time in 1997. I think that was the year. I was in it for about 3 or 4 years and then left to raise a couple of kids and then joined again. And over the years, I've been in it for a total of about, 15, 16, 18 years. I lose track of time. One thing I find without fail is, as I said, even though we all come from great backgrounds with skills, abilities, history, accomplishments, we step into the Toastmaster world, which is, let's be honest, it's bizarre. I mean, Toastmasters is such an unusual environment. But the thing is, it's so different from what most of us are accustomed to. And that imposter voice screams the loudest when we step into something different, when we transition from something familiar to something new. But the cool thing about Toastmasters is, and I'm sure you would agree, is this not a safe place to fail? I mean, really, where else can you fall flat on your face and people applaud as you go? And then extend a hand of support to lift you back up. That's the coolest thing about Toastmasters. And that's why dealing with imposter syndrome within the confines of Toastmasters is a gift, because it's a safe place to fail. It's a comfortable place to fail. And you will learn that in stepping into an unfamiliar or a new situation, such as taking on a leadership role, entering a contest, taking on a project, taking on an officer role, stepping into the trio role, as you enter into that position, that cross the threshold of change, and you might feel like, oh, I'm just not qualified. What if they find out I don't know what I'm doing? Hey, guess what? It's just Toastmasters. It's a great place to fail. It's a great place to grow. But in this session, I want to walk through strategies, 5 strategies to help you overcome your imposter syndrome experience. Now, I'm going to share my screen. Do I have share screening permission? It says I'm disabled, so.
I'll try to get it to you, Maureen.
Okay. Talk amongst yourselves for a minute. I'll give you a topic. I think you should just be able to click on my name.
Yeah, I can't find your name in the participants list.
Yeah, I'm in there twice. Once on my phone.
I got you. Is that it? You have it now?
I'm good. All right. Thank you, Chick. All right, there we go. I just had my clicker and I just lost my clicker. Huh, how did that go? It just literally, it evaporated from the planet. Oh, here it is, hiding behind a book. Okay, so we are going to learn how to push your envelope, which is another, again, coming from the aeronautics and aviation world, pushing your envelope is a term that we used. It means to expand your capacity. And that's what, oh my gosh, that's the beauty of Toastmasters. You will discover skills and abilities you didn't even know you have, and you'll perfect the ones that you already do when you decide to push your envelope. Now, lest you think I'm making this up about the hiccup heard around the world, this is an actual photograph of the control room of the Propulsion Systems Lab. And there I am, all the way tucked over in the corner. This was not the day that it happened, but it was the scene of where it happened. I wanted to flee that day. I was so humiliated and so embarrassed, and I just wanted to leave. And I'm so glad I didn't. I stayed there and stayed a part of the PSL community for practically my entire career at NASA. I was at NASA for almost 14 years. And I eventually became the director of this entire complex. So if a scared engineer who hiccuped her way into humiliation can rise above that and take on the role of being the director of this test facility, imagine what you can do in Toastmasters, which will, of course, expand out into your real world. Now, the imposter syndrome, it's the secret self-doubt and chronic fear of being found out as a fraud, despite the fact that you have a great resume, a great track record, a long list of accomplishments. It's an inability to own your greatness. You tend to dismiss or devalue your own accomplishments and your skills. Now, I'm going to have you take a little quiz, and it's not really like an answer. I mean, it is, but these are statements, and in your mind, I want you to think to yourself if it's true for you. And I've got 5 of them. Actually, there's 10 questions. The first 5 are generic. The second 5 are related to your experience in Toastmasters. So question number 1, do you give the impression you are more competent than you really are? Perhaps you are. And you know what? I don't want you to answer this because some of these can be a little revealing. So just in your mind, think to yourself, is it true? Are you afraid that others will discover how much ability or knowledge you lack? Do you compare your skills to your peers and fall short? Do you attribute much of your success to luck or timing? And is it hard for you to accept compliments about your work or your skills? If you answered yes to these questions or any of these questions, you might have a little bit of imposter syndrome, but let's drill down a little deeper. Let's go specifically to Toastmasters. Do you resist taking an officer position because you've never done it before? Do you turn down speaking slots because you think you can't prepare well enough? Do you avoid evaluating more experienced Toastmasters because because you think there's a perceived skill gap. They're better than me. Are you intimidated by the Toastmaster complexities like the acronyms, the pathways system, or maybe even a contest? And when you get a good evaluation, do you dismiss it thinking they're just being nice? You see, even in Toastmasters, we can hear that imposter voice. It makes qualified people think they're not qualified. And it's mostly because it's different. It's unfamiliar. It's a new world. It's a new set of circumstances. It might not necessarily be a new skill, but it's a new application of an existing skill. Yet we don't feel like we can do it. Now, there's bad news and good news about imposter syndrome. The bad news is you don't cure it. The good news is you can control it. You don't mend it, you manage it. You don't eliminate it, but you can alleviate it. And how do you do it? You do it with what I call my fraud-free framework. But let's get a little bit more background on who does it affect. There are pockets of people that imposter syndrome tends to be amplified with. People that are in STEM careers, science, technology, engineering, and math. They live with it. I was in engineering, mechanical engineer working at NASA. I heard it all the time. People that are in any kind of a math-related field, accountants, actuaries, financial planners, they just feel sometimes in over their head. It affects people in the arts industry, in the creative fields, photographers, performers, artists. If you're a person who is in the technical field and an artistic field, if you straddle both, like if you're a web designer or a graphic designer, you get a double dose. Lucky you, right? It affects people that are in a degreed, professional, certified, and recognized position like accountants, physicians, lawyers, CPAs, those are accountants, people that have to continually prove their competence. It affects people that are, a big pocket of people are people in the academic world, especially collegiate level and above, collegiate and post-collegiate, professors, teaching assistants, researchers, administrators at the college level, graduate students. And it's because they feel compelled to just create knowledge. It affects entrepreneurs. I'm a sole proprietor. And the thing about being an entrepreneur, especially if you're a sole proprietor, it's pretty much you're a lone ranger. You're a one-man show. And if you're in a field where there is not much mentoring, it's really hard to be convinced of your skills because you're not getting the right feedback and guidance from people. And it affects parents, especially moms. I'm a rocket scientist. I'm pretty smart, but I don't know if you're like me. There's nothing like having a few kids to make you feel really stupid. And so you look around and you think everybody else has got this parenting thing nailed down, except me. You know, I'm happy, I'm glad if my kids got fed today and they're adults. So it affects a lot of people. Now, the effect of having imposter syndrome is that it makes you feel like you're drowning. It makes you feel like you're in over your head, that you're treading water, and that you're just going to be taken under. It also keeps people small. It keeps them hidden, it keeps them timid, and it keeps them constantly looking over their shoulder, thinking, am I doing okay? Did I do the right thing? What are they thinking of me? What if I mess up? There's this amplified sense of I have to carry the whole world on my shoulders. So the fear of being discovered as a fraud is oppressive. But most significantly, it robs you of joy. If you entered a career thinking, this is really what I want to do, and you do have a track record of doing it well, there still is an element of this is so not what I signed up for. I'm exhausted. I'm stressed. I thought this was going to be easier. Yeah, you have pockets of enjoying it, but it's still really hard. I felt like this at NASA. I loved my work most times, but sometimes if something was just a little bit beyond my area of expertise or my skill level, I froze and panicked. And it was hard for me to move forward in my career. Now, what can you expect when you overcome it? Freedom, joy, liberation, excitement. You will be able to embrace your skills and abilities as valuable and treasured and unique. You'll be able to take more risks, even if it's just the baby steps. You'll be able to take on new responsibilities. You'll discover great, grand, and glorious things about yourself that you didn't even know, things that you would never have known unless you got through your imposter syndrome thinking. You'll be able to even accept failure as part of the process of personal journeying to success. Failure does not happen, success does not happen without a little bit of failure. But you will learn that failure will not undo you. It will instead amplify you and increase your capacity. So those are the great things that you can expect when you overcome imposter syndrome. Now, the solution is what I said before, is my fraud-free framework. 5 strategies to overcome imposter syndrome. Now, as a free gift to help you as we go along here, if you are familiar with using the codes, your QR codes, just take your camera on your phone and hover it over it with your camera. It's going to take you directly to a website, and you'll input your email address, and you will automatically get a free gift. You'll get a really cool, beautiful PDF that describes the fraud-free framework, but you'll also get a PDF of these slides. Now, if you don't want to do that right now, that's fine. At the end, I'll put this back up with the actual website. You can go take a look at it. But I wanted to give you a gift so that you can follow along and have something to refer to later on when we're done. Okay, so strategy number 1 in the fraud-free framework is to recognize the imposter syndrome. You cannot battle an enemy unless you recognize the enemy. There's a set of symptoms that as a cluster define the imposter syndrome. And when you recognize those symptoms, you are light years ahead of being able to overcome it. So the first symptom is what's called the imposter cycle. The imposter cycle looks like this. You walk into a project and you will either over-prepare or procrastinate. The over-preparer does everything possible because failure is not an option. They will dot every I, cross every T, overcome every obstacle, imagine fake obstacles, overcome them, gather people, send out emails, schedule meetings, send out updates, issue memos, cover all their bases, and get the project done. At the opposite end is this person who walks into the project and says, don't really know how to start, so I won't. I'll procrastinate and do everything else but for as long as they can until they get almost to the last minute and they realize, oh my gosh, I have a deadline to meet. I got to get this done. And 24/7, they are working like mad people to get the project done. And they look a lot like the over-preparer. So whether you are an over-preparer or a procrastinator, at the very end, it looks the same. The result is, doesn't matter which direction you go, the result is the same. You knock it out of the park. You exceed everybody's expectations. You are held up in such high esteem. People applaud you, recognize you, celebrate you. Woohoo! You're awesome and amazing. And you relax. Whew. But it's not because you did a good job. It's because you thought, phew, that was close. They almost figured out I really didn't know exactly what I was doing. And then you stress Because what's tomorrow? A new project, same cycle, it starts over. So you go through this cycle of ups and downs and stress and anxiety and overwork. And it's exhausting. And what you need to do is disrupt the cycle. Now that's the first symptom. The other 5 symptoms happen on this cycle in different areas. The second symptom is the tendency to be the perfectionist. This is somebody who will not accept any level of failure. Everything must be perfect. They must do it the best. They must be extraordinarily just over the top. It's not done until it's overdone. That's actually one of my favorite phrases. I cannot tolerate anything subpar. The third symptom is the superhero complex. If the perfectionist must do everything perfectly, the superhero must do everything and do it alone. This is the person who doesn't like to delegate. For whatever reason, many of them are valid. They just feel like if I ask for help, that must mean I'm not smart enough to do it myself. And I can't handle that. So the tendency to be this lone ranger or superhero, I'm here to save the day, it's a big symptom of struggling with imposter syndrome. The fourth symptom is the use of charm, humor, and insight, or a unique wisdom. This is actually one of my things. You may have been in a situation where you were part of a circle of people discussing something that maybe you weren't familiar with. And I don't know if you're like me. I get in a situation like that and I think, ooh, I feel really uncomfortable. I feel stupid because I don't know what they're talking about. Why do I feel pressured to know? I don't know, but I still feel stupid. And in fact, I think my silence amplifies my stupidity. So I have to add something to the conversation. And for me, the easiest thing is to throw in humor. It's just my default. So I'll throw in something humorous or obliquely refer to something that might sort of be related. Like, oh yeah, I read an article that was kind of related to that, and bring the conversation back to something I'm comfortable with. Because I feel like if I'm silent, I'm stupid. So irrational. Because I don't think that about other people. If someone's quiet in a conversation, I just simply think they're quiet. I don't make a judgment on it. So why would I expect other people to do that to me? The fifth and sixth symptoms are related to each other. Fear of failure is number 5. None of us want to fail. We all want to do a good job, but the person with imposter syndrome goes to Herculean efforts to avoid failure, to the point where they anticipate failure and won't even take the step forward towards that possibility. In Toastmasters, oh, I can't be a club officer. What if I fail? Well, why not just try it? I mean, really, I think the easiest club officer position is president, because it's just, you just run the meetings. The hardest, hands down, the hardest job, and it's a job I've never done as club officer, is VP of education. That's a detailed, I shouldn't say it's hard, it's just detailed. I'm not a detailed person. I know my limitations. It would be a train wreck for all of us. But I've done all the other jobs, PR, membership. I've not done treasure, because as much as I'm a numbers person, there were other more qualified people in the club that were willing to take that job on. But my point is, why stop yourself from taking a risk or a role if you anticipate failure? You don't know if you're going to fail. You're going to learn. But number 6, this is so cool. The fear or disdain of success. This is the person who thinks, I don't deserve the success I've had. Or they dismiss the success as something due to external circumstances, like, I only got promoted because I was a girl. No, I got promoted because my resume qualified me for the promotion. Being a girl was a teeny tiny part of it. The skills I brought to the job, the character qualities I brought to the job were bigger for me to get the job. But yet we dismiss it. Or we think to ourselves, if I get to be successful, people won't like me. Or how will it affect my family? Or I don't know if I deserve that pay increase. We have these weird issues related to success. And then we sometimes hide it as a fear of failure. We say to ourselves, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to fail. But really what we're saying is, I'm afraid I'm going to succeed. And then I'm going to have to repeat it. So it's not a fear of failure. It's a fear of success. So those are the 6 symptoms. So when you know the symptoms, which is strategy number 1, we'll move into strategy number 2, which is to reverse it. Now, when I say reverse it, I mean when you are aware of being hit with a symptom, in that instant, you're going to do the right thing to flip your thought process. Now, there's 3 steps to do this. I took this straight out of the pages of psychology. I am not a psychologist. I didn't study it in college. I don't have any formal training or degree in it. I'm just a big fan. I love to read about it. Now, if you're in psychology or if you are been in therapy or counseling, you might be familiar with cognitive behavior therapy, CBT. It's a process to arrest your thought process and change it. Strategy number 2 is based on that. I call it the Tri-C approach because the 3 steps start with the letter C. Brilliant, right? The first step is to capture a thought, and then you cross-examine the thought, and then you counter the thought. And this is what I mean. You know the symptoms. We just went through them. When you suddenly realize, there's one of my symptoms. I am choosing to not delegate. Capture that thought. Then you cross-examine it. You put it on the witness stand and you drill it down. You drill down to its element. Where did that thought come from? Is it valid? What is it accomplishing for you? What would happen if you chose to not believe that? So you think to yourself, why am I not delegating? And list all the answers in your head. Well, I don't have time to explain it. I don't believe anybody can do it better than me. There's nobody around me with the skill. I want all the glory for myself. I mean, whatever the reasons are, drill down and then answer those questions and determine, is that thought really valid and useful? Because here's the thing about our thoughts. Just because you have a thought doesn't make it true. And just because you have a thought doesn't make it yours. It could have come to you, been planted in you, developed in you from somebody else, from your background, from your childhood, from the corporate culture, from your gender, from your cultural background. We are so disciplined in so many areas of our lives, but sometimes in our thinking, we're not. We never challenge thoughts. We just let them go and just give them a platform. I'm going to challenge you to not do that. Cross-examine that thought. And then if you determine that thought is not profitable to you, counter it. And you counter it with immediate, decisive action. Why, I think I will enter the contest. Yes, I will take on that officer role. Yes, I am going to run for that trio election. Yes, I am going to schedule that open house. Immediate and decisive action. Now, let me give you an example of how this actually worked in my life. I'm part of the National Speakers Association. My job now is I'm a professional speaker. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I was living in Ohio at the time. I live in Las Vegas now. I've been here almost a year, but I lived in Ohio for 36 years. Was at a dinner with the National Speakers Association Ohio chapter. Next to me was a charming older gentleman by the name of Jack Park. I didn't realize it at the time, but Jack Park is a giant in the Ohio State football world. I love college football, and the two of us just struck up a great conversation. He was telling these great stories. He was engaging and funny, and I said to him, wow, Jack, you've got great football stories. You need to write these in a book. And he said, well, actually, I already have 4. Who knew? He said, but I'm probably due for another one. Well, fast forward then about, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, we stayed friends. He called me up one day. He was so excited. He said, Maureen, I just read an article that you wrote. I write fairly regularly for the Toastmaster magazine. He's not a Toastmaster, but somehow he found this article. He read this article. He said, wow, Maureen, he said, you're a really good writer. He said, I have an idea. What if you and I co-write a book about Ohio State football? My first thought was, Jack is on crack. And my second thought was, I don't think I could do this. You see, I had been teaching this imposter syndrome strategy for a while. And so I thought, okay, time for me to put it to work on myself. My initial thoughts were, I am not an Ohio State football expert. I went to Notre Dame. What are my Notre Dame friends going to say? I don't know college football in general. Fans are going to figure that out. And Jack is only asking me to help because, I don't know, maybe he thinks I'm cute. So I'm thinking these are my thoughts. Okay, let's cross-examine them. Am I an Ohio State football expert? No. Do I need to be? No. That's Jack's job. Fine. Am I a good writer? Yeah, I am. Toastmasters keeps giving me assignments, and I've written 3 other books myself. People like them, and I get compliments all the time. Okay, check. I'm a good writer. What are my Notre Dame friends going to say about me writing a book about Ohio State? Hey, people flip and split loyalty in the college football world all the time. In fact, at the time, about 3 years ago, the head coach of Ohio State, Urban Meyer, guess what? He used to coach at Notre Dame. He was an assistant coach. I thought if it's good enough for Urban, it's good enough for me. And then the fourth one was, well, Jack's only asking me because I'm cute. Okay, I'm cute, but that's not why he asked me. He asked me because I had good skills. So I evaluated these, so I cross-examined it, and there were enough reasons for me to act on it, to counter it and say, yep, let's do it. And it was, I'm telling you, it was the coolest journey. It took 2 years to write the book. We launched it, it's about 2.5 years ago now. It's called Buckeye Reflections, and it is available on Amazon. If you are an Ohio State fan, go get it. You will not regret it. All right, strategy number 3. So the first strategy was to recognize it. Second strategy is to reverse it. Strategy number 3 is something I call repeople it. I totally made this word up. But here's the beauty of imposter syndrome. There's kind of this split. The thing about imposter syndrome, it's amplified in community and diminished in community. We need to be around people. When you are by yourself, it's probably easy to see yourself as a rock star. You can probably say, I'm doing pretty good. I've got a good job, got a good paycheck, I'm making an impact, I've got great skills. When you're by yourself, you're hitting the mark. You get around other people, and that's where you start to think, ooh, I don't know, I don't feel as successful as him, or as smart as her, or as accomplished as them. We have this compare and despair, and we need to adjust that. But this is what it looks like. It's a cognitive distortion that looks like this. Suppose you were to illustrate the sum total of your skills and abilities with something I call a dot, a circle. So here's your stuff you know. And in your dot are your skills, your abilities, your background, your education, your opinions, your experiences, your perspective, everything that makes up who you are. You have a great dot. But then you look around and you're like, uh-oh, everybody's looking at me. They think I'm smarter than I am. They think my dot is bigger. They think there's more stuff in my dot than really is. And you start to feel stress. You start to feel like there's this zone of fraudulence. I'm this smart. They think I'm this smart. But then as you look around, it gets worse. You look at everybody else and you have this dot. You think they see this dot. You look at them and you see this dot. And there's this source of stress because you feel less than everybody else. But that's the distortion. This is the reality. You do have a dot. And in your dot are great, valuable, awesome, and wonderful things. And guess what? Everybody else has a dot. They're different. They are no less valuable, no less worthy, no less significant or necessary. They are just different. Different backgrounds, experiences, education, opportunities, opinions. They're just different. But this is the coolest part. This is the sum total of all stuff that can be known by everybody across all of history, across all of time, across all of the world. And the thing is, even if we were to lump together everybody's stuff, end to end, barrier to barrier, it would nowhere come near to all of stuff known. Why do we put pressure on ourselves to know everything? Even as a collective whole, we can't know everything. Why do we do this to ourselves? Now, maybe you're thinking, well, Maureen, that's really cool, but I'm still not at the top of my game. There still is somebody. I wish I was as smart as so-and-so. Their stuff really is better stuff. Well, let's take this to the ridiculous. Let's consider some celebrities. I picked 3 celebrities. LeBron James. I had to put LeBron in there. I'm from Cleveland. And he, we loved him. Known for his basketball, right? And then Carrie Underwood. She's a phenomenal entertainer. And then Ronald Reagan, a movie star and a great politician. Regardless of whether you agree with his politics, he still made a mark on our country. Do you suppose any of these 3 would look at the other 2 and say, oh, my dot is just not as cool as theirs? I wish I had their dot. I mean, think about that. That makes no sense at all. In fact, it borders on creepy. I don't think LeBron wants to sing like Carrie. Or maybe he does. I don't know. Maybe he does sing like her. But I just can't imagine the 2 of them switching dots. I can't imagine Ronald Reagan speaking, or Carrie Underwood leading a nation like Reagan did. So if we think it's that ridiculous for celebrities to switch dots, why do we want to switch dots? Now, maybe you're thinking, oh, Maureen, those are, people in different industries at the top of their game. I'm most concerned about people in my own industry, people in my own world. You know what, Maureen? I am not like an Albert Einstein's. I'm just not that smart. Really? Did you know that Albert Einstein himself says, the exaggerated esteem in which my life work is held makes me very ill at ease. I feel compelled to think of myself as an involuntary swindler. Even Einstein himself struggled with imposter syndrome. Even he struggled with his greatness. Now, I don't know if you know much about him. He had a learning disability. He, I don't know if he was dyslexic or if there was some other cognitive thing, but he hated math, loved science, but he failed his college entrance exam. And yet his love of science drove him to overcome those limitations, and he rewrote science. If he can do that, what can you do? What can you do? All right, strategy number 4. How am I doing on time? I don't even know. We're going to push through here. Strategy number 4. So strategy number 1 is to recognize it. Number 2 is to reverse it. Number 3, repeople it, which is to define your ability and contribution. Number 4 is to repel it, because here's what happens. Even if you follow the first 3 strategies, it's still going to pop up. You're still going to sometimes feel like you're in over your head. You're going to doubt your ability. You're going to think that you're not qualified to do the project or the work, and you're going to dismiss your skills and abilities. So you need to have a strategy that will repel it, that will continually just dismiss it away from you. And this is the fun one. If you do nothing else, remember this part. When I was at NASA, and I mentioned that I became the director of the Jet Engine Research Facility, the Propulsion Systems Lab, I loved it. I loved my job. And then it was time to move on. It was time for me to leave the agency. Nothing bad happened. It was just, chapter of my life had kind of come to a close. It was time for something new. I was really concerned about handing the reins of the facility onto my successor. I thought, how do I do that? How do I hand over the baton? I thought, I'll create a job manual. So I sat down and I wrote down everything involved with my job, everything I did, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, everything. I wrote about the people, the processes, the projects, the politics. I wrote down where things were stored, what documents were called, how to calculate specific things. I mean, I put down everything. And it's 13 pages of a manual. And when I was done, I gifted it to my successor. And it was beautiful. The transition was so smooth. Well, probably 15 years later, I was moving and uncovered this document, found it in a box, and I sat down and I started to read it. I was like, wow, I was good.
How you doing?
I did a complicated job, and I had the documentation to prove it. That's what I suggest that you do. Create your own rah-rah documentation. Collect all of the data that says you're awesome. Even if you have to do what I did, write down a job description, own your dot, collect all of the good press that's ever been said about you. If you've been interviewed, profiled in a newspaper article, if you've been covered by the media, thank you notes, promotion notices, letters of recommendation, trophies, awards, certificates, whatever it is, capture them and review them frequently. But here's the key. Do not dismiss the validity of them. Own it. Accept it. Believe it. I mean, when I think back to what were they thinking what was NASA thinking when they hired me? Did I really come in under the radar? Did I fool them all into thinking I was qualified? Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, this was NASA. It is a machine of layer upon layer upon layer of approval and eyes looking at my resume and my application. For me to think that I pulled the wool over all of those people is ridiculous. My resume spoke for myself. I had something that NASA needed. I had qualities maybe, yeah, I was fresh out of college. I didn't have the skills yet, but I had the character qualities. I had the creativity, the stick-to-itiveness, the work ethic. I had those character qualities. Those count sometimes for way more than skills. So own your dot and allow yourself to feel great about being great. Strategy number 5, the last one as we head towards the finish line here. This may sound a little woo-woo. This may sound a little out there, but hang in there. Let me describe. I call it reinforcing it. I have learned in all of my research and all of my interviews and talking with people and presenting this content over and over and over, the core issue is not just self-confidence. It is not just self-doubt. The core issue of imposter syndrome, it's shame. Shame. We just at our core think, oh, there's something I need to hide. There's something not good about me. Now, the difference between shame and guilt is significant. Guilt says what I did was wrong. Shame says what I am is wrong. And the only solution to the shame issue is to know who you are and to celebrate who you are. It's what I call, well, not me, psychologists call it attitude certainty. Attitude certainty is your personal conviction on a core set of values that is associated with your sense of self-certainty. In other words, your opinions, your cognitive assent to what you believe, what you hold true. It's basically the things that rock you out of bed in the morning. In order for you to bring your A game, you need to know your Y game. What is it you're willing to fight for? What are your core values and principles? What drives you? For many of us, it's a spiritual issue. What are your spiritual convictions? Who are you at your core? It is essential that you confirm your certainty. Now, when I say confirm your certainty, I don't just simply mean think positive. That doesn't work for people with imposter syndrome, because if it worked, it would work. I mean, if all you had to do was think positively, guess what? We would just think positively and all of our problems would go away. It's much deeper than just simply thinking differently. In fact, here's a cartoon that illustrates it. I didn't get permission to duplicate it. That's why it's grayed out. But we've got green guy, red guy. Green guy says, I don't think I have what it takes to do this job. And red guy says, of course you do. You have what it takes. And then he says, you just have to think positively. And then green guy says in the last one, okay, I'm positive I don't have what it takes. See, it's not just about positive thinking. It is about knowing to your core who you are and what drives you and what your spiritual convictions are and what your attitudes and beliefs are. And that takes work, but it's well worth the effort. So here are the 5 strategies. Recognize it, reverse it, repeople it, repel it, and reinforce it. If you follow this fraud-free framework, I guarantee you're going to see colossal differences and improvements in your the amount of self-doubt you experience. Now, let me give you a little interruption. I throw this into all of my presentations. I do present this around the country. Well, of course, lately, it's not been physically around the country, but if you are part of an organization or a company or a community that you think might benefit from this, I would love to talk with you. I would love to connect with you to see how I could bring this message of hope to the people in your world. And as an added bonus, well, I shouldn't say bonus because it's not free, I've created this program, the Fraud-Free Framework, that I profiled here in this session, but this video program that I've developed will take you even deeper. It's a series of 7 videos. You'll get them 1 a week at a time, videos and a workbook for you to take a deep dive into each one of these strategies. You will learn specifically how these symptoms show up in your life. You will learn how to reverse it. I'll give you some deeper strategies and questions and processes for that try-see process to give you the tools to overcome it. You'll learn to re-people it. I'm going to show you exactly how you can really celebrate the skills and abilities and your backgrounds that you bring. Because when you can celebrate that, you'll be free from feeling limited by it. And then I'll give you some processes to do a deeper dive into the spiritual part. And again, it's not churchy. It is character-driven. It is values-driven. And then I'm going to give you the chance to do the homework to go collect all of your documentation. So if you think that's something that you'd like, you can scan that right there. It'll take you right to that page. If you don't have a phone, it is located at maureenz.com/Toastmasters. That will take you to the same place where you can take advantage of that program. One day in PSL, towards the end, it's towards the middle of my career, I was the lead engineer for the engine work on the X-29 forward swept-wing aircraft. It looks like this. I'm going to stop sharing here for a second. My role as the project engineer for this test was to keep the program on schedule. Now, the X-29 engine, it's called an F404 engine. It's a turbofan engine. It's about 13 feet long, 3 feet in diameter, and the back end of the engine necks down to about 18 inches. The day we were supposed to start testing, my crew chief, Jack, came to me and said, Maureen, we can't start the test. We don't have those inside dimensions yet. He needed some diameters inside of the engine. Now, the pressure was on. This engine test was tied to a flight program, which was tied to a weapons program sponsored by the Department of Defense, which meant national security was involved, which meant that the stability of the free world was on my shoulders. No pressure, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, if we don't get those measurements, there goes the stability of the free world. What do we do? And Jack said, well, we need a digital micrometer. That's a fancy name for a ruler, which we didn't have. So I called the measurement lab. I said, hey, this is Maureen over in PSL. We have a problem. Can you send someone over with a digital micrometer to get some inside measurements today? They said yes. Phew! Stability restored. A little later, the technician from the measurement lab walks into the test facility. He's all dressed up in white coveralls like a hazmat suit. And I immediately saw a problem. He's lugging his equipment. And I thought, uh-oh. You see, the back end of the engine was 18 inches. He wasn't. Yeah, not even close. I mean, he was pushing 6 feet wide. I thought, we can't let him in there. We'll never get him out. Then I have a bigger problem than the stability of the free world. Well, I looked at him and I looked at Jack. Jack looked at me. Now, I'm not standing, but I'm 120 pounds soaking wet. Jack looked at me and he handed me a pair of coveralls and he said, Maureen, you do it. Oh, no, I can't do it. I'm not qualified. It's not my job. What if I screw up? No, I can't go in there. It's scary. It's dark. It's smelly. Oh no, I can't do it. I'd reached my limit of my skill. And Jack said, well, Maureen, we have no choice. But if you wear a headset, we'll talk you through it. Okay, I'll do it. I put on those coveralls and I slithered into that engine. Oh, it was claustrophobic and smelly and awful. And oh, but I could hear them talk to me. I can do that. Took the measurements. Oh, this is easier than I thought. Oh my gosh, look at this. I'm inside of an F-404 engine. This is amazing. It's the engine on the F-14. I mean, if you've seen Top Gun, you've seen the scene where they're flying off the aircraft carrier with flame coming out. That's where I was without flame. And this is extraordinary. This was so cool. I slid out of the engine when I was done. And the girl that came out was different than the girl that went in, because she chose to push the envelope. She chose to take on a risk. She chose to challenge the assumption. She chose to ask for help and accept the help. And when you do that, you will push your envelope. When you do all these things that the fraud-free framework has, you will be amazed at what opportunities await you. And you will never be the same, even in Toastmasters. So when you are facing a situation where you fear the hiccup heard round the world, remember to push your own envelope, and you will never be the same. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Maureen. That was awesome.